Hello and welcome to An Ink We Trust, Tattoo in Our Culture in San Fernando Valley, bringing you the latest from who's making a mark in the Valley tattoo scene. I'm your host, Anthony Sanchez. Today we're going to talk to Alfredo Alvear. Got to practice it. Parlour Tattoo in Winnetka. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I guess first question I have here is, are you ready for Christmas?
I'm not a big fan of the holidays, so I'm never ready for Christmas. Other than spoiling it for others, telling them that Santa Claus is just Satan Claus spelled sideways, things like that.
Do you believe in Krampus?
I kind of like the Krampus thing.
Right.
It's kind of like, if Satan ran around, doing Christmas, and stealing kids and stuff. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But when I was a student, Christmas comes around at that bad time near finals, right?
Oh, that's true.
And so I was always broke. And then, later on, started a life. First I was a bit poor. That's fine. Okay, so I'm broke around the holidays still. And then I start tattooing it. Oh, yeah, December's the worst month of the year, so I'm broke. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I've heard that from other artists, how December's kind of a quiet month usually.
That's a polite way to put it.
Okay. Okay, how about this? It sucks.
Yeah, it totally sucks.
So, are there any tattoo magazines, since you're a little old school, if you don't mind me?
Oh,
the tattoo magazine used to be the thing.
Tattoo magazines used to be the thing. You worked hard to try to get your work published in them, and hopefully it will boost your career and stuff. But honestly, with the internet, like a lot of print media, I think it suffered, and they've become, I won't call them irrelevant. I stopped looking at tattoo magazines kind of after a while in the business. I stopped caring about them. And then, of course, social media, Instagram particularly, you don't need magazines to get a large following or a large number of people seeing your work. So I don't know how they're staying in business, to be honest. I know one of them was a tax write-off anyways, even when it was running well. It was part of a larger magazine group.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't a solo magazine. It was just being used as a write-off.
Part of a conglomerate of
yeah, actually it was, I can't remember the name of the magazine. I think it was Skin and Ink, but I wouldn't swear to it.
Okay.
And they were part of Flint Publishing.
Oh, wow, we know how they were making money.
Yeah, they actually had a lot of magazines, including things like bridal magazines, etc.
Right.
They lost money on everything as a tax write-off, except the pornography. The pornography is where they made their money.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that the magazines suddenly become profitable.
Yeah, I guess so. I could see that's a cool story. I'm going to have to look into that further. I didn't know that history. How long have you been in the Valley here with us?
Recently, as far as Parlour Tattoo goes, I've been in the Valley about a year or so. I used to live in the Valley. I'm a graduate of Valley College.
Okay, where's Valley College?
Valley College is near Van Nuys and stuff in Central Valley.
All right.
And so, it's a community college. And so I lived in the Valley for quite a while. Then I moved, down to L.A. and then to Long Beach and then South Bay and now the Valley again.
Okay.
So
yeah, you're SoCal. You're pure SoCal.
Some people stay in one area. I've moved around evidently.
Yeah, my family I was born in Whittier, then in Baldwin Park, and I went to Mount Sac and Walnut, and then
oh my God, Mount Sac!
Yeah.
I haven't heard that name in years.
Oh, okay.
When I was high school, junior high, I lived in West Covina, which is just
I lived in West Covina
west
too.
of that.
Yeah. So I lived by the mall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I moved in, they just ripped out the Sam Goody. And then by the time I moved out, they closed that Tower Records. They still had the one on Sunset.
Right.
But they closed that one, and that's where I learned that little Tower Records in West Covina is how I saw tattoo. Right?
Oh,
the
really?
magazines, because they had the magazine section, so everything was right in there.
I slept on the sidewalk in front of that Tower Records getting tickets for Black Sabbath concert.
Oh yeah, I forget. Everyone used to line up for stuff. Nice.
Yeah.
So you were in the punk rock scene here in LA then?
Yeah. First when I was like younger, high school age, the metal thing, heavy metal, and then eventually kind of more evolved into the punk thing with in college years and stuff.
Is it interesting to look back and see, because a lot of the 80s was kind of mushed together now, like the playlist, it's all, but there was this division between the kind of hair metal and the regular metal and then the punk.
Yeah, it was the crowds didn't interact well.
Yeah.
With the one very copious exception of being Motorhead.
Okay.
You can go to a Motorhead show and you'd see guys with spiked up mohawks and big hair farmer things, and even guys with hairspray hair, and everyone was fine because it was Motorhead and Lenny Scott and stuff.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I was fairly separated. When I hear stuff now, like let's say mainstream radio plays Ramones.
Yeah.
And the irony is not lost on me because the mainstream radio wouldn't touch the Ramones in the day.
Yeah.
Much less anything, less poppy than the Ramones. And
right.
sometimes I hear something, I'm like, you're playing it now? Oh my God. And acting like, oh, we've always been into this. No, yeah. It's very weird to hear it on occasion.
I taking graphic arts or graphic design here on campus, and we did a little project, and it came up about Ramones. Mm-hmm. Someone chose Ramones, and like all the 20-year-olds were like, "Who's that?" I was like, "No, Alexa, how do I kill myself?" And then,
oh, that's so sad. Alexa played Despacito.
And then somebody, this other girl, was like, "Oh, well, I'm choosing Cure because that's my dad's music." I was like, "What just happened?"
Well, yeah. Before the show started, I told you I work a little with high school students.
Okay.
And sometimes their tastes actually run quite old.
Yeah.
I don't know, like 10 years ago, there was a bunch of students who were really into, some old speed metal, like old Slayer and stuff.
Okay.
I'd make fun of them. I'm like, that's the music I listened to when I was young. Shouldn't you like something that offends me? And they're like, oh, this my parents hate this. I'm like, I don't. Yeah. I grew up with this. I'm as old as your parents. What's up?
I definitely know some trap music offends me, and not lyrically, or just how simple it is. Because I mean, granted, the Ramones were simple, but maybe because I liked it because they were melodic.
Maybe, like the Ramones had a poppy feel to them at all times before poppy punk became like a commercial entity. And punk, there's a wide range. I mean, early Black Flag is not melodic at all.
Oh, yeah.
It's very coarse, very simple. And it's just a matter of taste, I guess. You like what you like. What can you do?
Yeah. I mean, I was more grunge myself, but my brothers were total punk skater type guys. So my brother built like a skate ramp in front of my driveway in West Covina off of Bandy. And so all the kids, we were on one of those streets where like you could just see it. So all the kids, I know now Tony Hawk helps support like skate parks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but so they would they'd be blasting all their punk rock, and then we had some old school guys that kind of were burnt out, but they would give us like tapes and show us stuff. So those were the sounds that I grew up with.
And I gotta say, some of that early punk rock stuff crosses over into the tattoo thing because while 70s and 80s rock stars, including heavy metal, some of them had some tattoos, but really not a lot. I mean, then you got these punk rock guys, and their tattoos were mostly horrible, but they were there and they were visible, and it was a bigger deal. It was like not, oh, look at me, I'm a rebellious rock star who's worth $1 million. It was, I actually make no money off this. I gotta work at Burger King to make ends meet. I'm still making music, and I'm tatted down.
Is that how rough it was then?
Yeah, I mean, that's why all the punk rock stuff from those days, if you look at early punk rock, all of it was independently published.
Right. Yeah.
And it was harder then to independently publish than it is now because there was no digital. You actually had to press albums.
Right.
And so this was no small deal. And everyone started their own stuff. Misfits started, Black Flag started, Dead Kennedy started. Everybody had to make their own labels. Everyone had to self-publish. Obviously, Alternative Tentacles grew and published a lot of other punk rock and underground stuff. But making money, they didn't really make a lot of money.
I mean, not that you're supposed to know, but Sex Pistols definitely got like a good boost too from Johnny McLaren. What's his name, McLaren? But
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some bands eventually could make a living off their stuff, and some bands like the Sex Pistols obviously toured big.
Yeah.
But it was never 70s, 80s rock star stuff. If you look, if you look at just mainstream AOR rock type of thing, and even the metal stuff, you know, you look at a band, I don't know, Ozzy or hair metal bands like Rat. You know, they made big money for their time. Some of them petered out quickly, but
Right.
Punk rock bands, not so much. Some of them made a little money kind of after punk kind of gained a certain level of popularity mainstream-wise with the more poppy bands, you know, which were still good, don't get me wrong, but, you know, like your Offspring, Bad Religion eventually got some more mainstream play. I'm sure they made a living.
Yeah, Blink-182 is also in that. You know, you
Right.
walk into Hollister and you're like, what's going on? So tell me a little bit about the high school students you work with. You're saying that you do robotics?
Yeah, I do. I help mentor a high school robotics class. This year, this coming season, which starts in January, will be our 20th anniversary. And I was there from not quite day one, but we'll say the first year. And so I've been doing this 20 years, working with high school kids, trying to get them to build a robot for a competition.
Okay.
Last year, we finally won a regional.
Congratulations.
So it was a really big deal for us.
I actually have a friend, Tad, who used to help out with that too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I know a little bit through him. But so tell me, like, what it's like to mentor these kids. Like, what are you doing? What are you helping with?
Okay, well, two things. One, the mechanical bits. You know, I know how to use hand tools and this and that. So I teach them the basic safety stuff and how to use the tools properly, and grumble when they use the wrong tool for the wrong thing, and then tell them what's the right tool. So there's that part of it, the basics of how to work with your hands. And the other part is, over time, I realized I wanted to get some big ideas across, in that when I was young, certain things I found out later could have been explained to me in high school, and no one bothered. And so I try to explain certain things. I'll try to make this quick. For instance, an example is, in design, when you're designing a robot or anything else, like a car, you always compromise. To get one thing, you give up another, as an example for that. In a car, if you want it to steer like a race car really quick, you give up stability. If you want stability, you give up steering. So to get one, all right, so I teach them that in reference to the robot. And then eventually I start to move it more towards general life. All things are compromised. They look at me and they're like, oh, you know how to do this because, you know, you're old and have experience. I said, yes, I do, but my experience closes me off to new ideas. So my pro is, yay, experience, but my con is that I don't examine all possibilities. A student, on the other hand, doesn't have my experience, that's their con, but their pro is all possibilities are open. So it's not that my ideas are better than theirs or theirs are better than mine. It's that we each have a compromise at the opposite end of the spectrum, and together maybe we can come up with something that works. So that's a big idea. So, you know, they learn, oh, all things have a pro and con, blah, blah, blah. So that's my basic goal, is to get a few big ideas across that I think will help them in life.
Right. I like that. Just so you're also mentoring them.
Yes, literally mentoring them as opposed to just robotics mentoring them.
Eventually there's going to be like a Jaime Escalante type movie about you then.
God, I hope not.
You hope not? I think you also mentioned that you were into motorcycles. Do you think that kind of blended into why you know about how to work with tools?
Yes, absolutely. Mind you, a girlfriend twisted my arm to get me into robotics. You know, she asked me if I wanted to help after I'd been, you know, giving her the big thumbs up at a distance. And I said I didn't know anything about building a robot. She said, neither do I. Do you want to help or don't you? If you've ever had a partner, you know the answer to that. The answer is yes. And I used my knowledge of motorcycles, and specifically, more specifically, motorcycle racing, as a constant metaphor, because it really works well with robotics, because you're building a machine for a competition. That's unusual in sport other than racing. And a lot of my knowledge on how chassis work, the physics of weight distribution, blah, 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 stuff like that, helps. So I'm good at designing the actual drivetrain, helping to design the actual drivetrain and being clear on why choices are made so they understand they're not arbitrary or just from, oh, high on down. He knows what he's talking about, and just because he does, we do it. No, I'll explain everything. If I can't explain it, then I don't understand it. So,
what kind of bike do you have then?
Currently,
bikes.
Currently, one bike. The bike is the Triumph Speed Triple. It's a 3-cylinder bike, so it's an unusual engine, and I like unusual engines.
All right. Do you go riding often?
Not at the moment. I've been kept from my bike for a little while for financial reasons, but when I do, I try, I usually will use it as a commuter. I like to ride a lot. I understand there's hazards, but I like to ride a lot.
You feel pretty, I mean, you've been riding for a while, but you feel pretty safe going between the lanes?
Oh yeah, I lane split. Honestly, it's not as dangerous as it looks to car drivers.
Okay.
All right, and sociology background. Statistically, there's no overrepresentation of motorcycle accidents due to lane splitting.
So let's talk about your sociology degree. That's pretty interesting. Where'd you get your degree from?
I got it from Cal State Northridge.
Okay, so right here nearby.
Yep.
So you got into that. What was the turning point that you decided sociology is the thing for me?
I've always been interested in how things work culturally. It's kind of what they call a soft science. I mean, it's not as easy to quantify, obviously, as math or physics. But, things like history, sociology, anthropology have always interested me. I think I settled on sociology because it's the here and now. Anthro is the there somewhere else and now, or somewhere else in past. History is plainly history. While it shapes our present, it is the past, and I was more interested in the present. But it means that I also am a bit of a history buff here and there, not like a major history buff, but
right.
And I like it. I got turned to the art thing because of I was planning on being a professor, but during my tenure as a student, there was economic problems in California, and they took it out on the schools, and I realized if I wanted an unstable job, I could pick something else.
Yeah, I kind of fell into English, and that's why I'm even back here, is not a degree that's like totally employable. I thought I was going to get a PhD, but then when I was doing my my kind of like, it was like the 60-page paper that was supposed to be the beginning of a dissertation, I was like, this is not my jam. I like writing. I'm fine with reading books and writing essays on them and all that stuff. Even journalism I took last year. But that deep part of it, and then people saying like how hard it is to even get tenure, like you end up having to move wherever those jobs are.
Yeah, it's not like you get to choose where you want to work.
Right. So I hear that. So then art became your thing, or was it tattooing that came first?
More tattooing than art in and of itself. I was in school, had the sociology major, and I was like, I was already getting tattooed, and so I developed a bit of an interest in art through the tattooing. And then I'm like, I'm going to take some art classes for fun. Why not?
Right.
And I found out I could draw, and. And so I kept going with that just for fun, but I kept taking more classes until I convinced myself I could do this on someone's skin.
Nice.
And on the positive side, as far as school went, I had to learn a bunch of mediums. You have to learn, graphite and charcoal and scratchboard and pen and ink and, eventually color pencil, painting and acrylic, painting and oil, painting and watercolor. And that helped because every time you learn a new medium, it makes each medium a little easier to learn. It's because it's a similar process.
Do you have a favorite medium?
As far as non-tattooing, I would say probably oil. I like oil. It's all squishy and fun, and you can constantly overpaint. Just let it dry and paint over it if you don't like it.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for visual artists. That's what I call them now, since it could be kind of anything. But
yeah, it could be sculpture. It could be mixed media.
Yeah, my mom and my brother Aaron are like, they could just look at something and draw it, and I'm like, this semester I'm like, I'm not a graphic art designer. There's like some things up there, and I was like, how do they do that?
Yeah, it's so many things. It's kind of funny because I know some people over the years. I've known people who could draw, but their compositional skills aren't necessarily, top notch. They draw well. Ask them to draw anything they can. I'm like, oh my God, I can't draw that well. But ask them to compose, it's a different skill. Then some people, like I worked for someone once, and her drawing skills were mediocre, to be honest. And even her tattooing skills weren't great, but her compositional skills were very good. She could definitely lay out a design and make it work. So it's, any visual arts or even a lot of, I don't know, it extends beyond visual arts. So it's not a skill, it's a series of skills. And you might be better at something more than another. Like, say, music. Someone might be a really good songwriter and a terrible soloist.
True.
You know, or man, that guy can solo, but don't make him write a riff because someone else has got to take that part of the band, you know.
I actually posted something this week. I grew up listening to a lot of classical music when I was a kindergartner kind of person for kind of traumatic reasons that I won't get into. But there was a lot of yelling. They used it to drown it out. And so I when like Van Halen and all them came around, it was very much like that same type of virtuosity that you used to have, and like that was, I guess that's my other, sorry, we're being old men. That's the other issue with trap music, is there's not that like, or there's not occasionally, like you have Busta Rhymes and hip hop, so there's definitely people, and Eminem I just heard did it like fast, that really, really fast, that's like,
It takes a skill that I don't understand how they manage it to be able to enunciate at such a high speed.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's doing vocally what you described in the 80s guitar players did instrumentally, you know, and before that jazz players like the bebop era, it was partially all about speed. And making it still work. It wasn't just a fluster of 30-second notes. It was a fluster of 30-second notes that made a lot of sense. Right. And I think part of a lot of guitar players in the 80s, I mean, they if they weren't that good, they just played fast. But and if you're a layperson like myself, fast always sounds good. But vocally, I'm just baffled at how some people can manage this.
For sure. So let's see. When people ask you how many tattoos you've done, what's your answer?
How many tattoos I've done?
Or how many tattoos do you have? I get that question too. Like, how many tattoos?
I always, I never liked the question, to be honest. So I just tell them, well, you know, I got like an arm and part of my leg done, and that's about it, you know. And they're like, what's the number? I'm like, if you get enough tattoos, the number will be 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So just keep getting tattooed and it'll come down to 1.
I like that concept. It starts at 1 and it ends at 1. Ideally it ends. This is my my artist that did my left sleeve. He was like, the game is whoever has the most ink wins.
Yes.
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 So we talk, let's see, what's your best memory from working on a tattoo?
Oh, I don't know that there's a single best. I mean, because you get moments of satisfaction through your career at different moments. You know, the right customer, the right work, you're doing what you like at that moment. Now, sometimes your style may change over time, so, you know, if you did the same thing at a different time in your career, it might be less satisfying. So I'm going to be vague as hell right there, and
you can get specific, too. We have...
It's... I don't know, like right now I've been working on a customer of mine on and off for like 11 years. And lately, I don't know, every time I work on him, it's been really, really fun material. He's primarily, well, exclusively, black and gray guy. And lately he's had this thing for faces, hands, mouths, and eyes. It sounds a little odd when you phrase it like that, but that's what we've been doing, just this collage of hands, disembodied hands in different shapes and disembodied eyes, and then mixed in with various faces. And it's been very satisfying, both technically, because stylistically I've been trying to push for a certain look on it, and I've been happy with what I've achieved. It's black and gray. It's a little bit coarser than some, but I like the look, so I maintain it. And thematically, just subject matter-wise, it's a little offbeat, and I've been really enjoying it. So there's an example of one that stands out for me.
But is it reflective to see your work over 11 years on somebody?
Yeah, it is, because there's things that, you know, I would do different now. You know, I would have suggested maybe a different course of action, but that just comes with the evolution of existing. I mean, there's no way around it. Even looking at my own portfolio sometimes I look at it and go, oh, well, you know, that's an okay piece. I might do it different. Or sometimes I look at something and go, hey, damn, I I forgot I did that. That's a really nice design. And, I get impressed with myself for a brief moment. But if I look back far enough, that'll stop.
Are you still doing flash art, or you just you have people that just do sleeves and stuff that you're willing to do that?
Almost exclusively custom. If someone has a specific idea that they bring in and it's tattooable and it's not a rip-off of someone else's tattoo, certainly I'll do it. And if someone wants something classic, that maybe, because the shop I work at doesn't have flash on the walls, but let's say you want a traditional flash design, a swallow, 5-petal traditional rose. Oh, yeah, I can draw those out pretty damn fast, and I love doing it. There's something fun about giving yourself up to tradition, and also the old techniques used, like the shading style from the old school tattoos. They don't use gray. They just use black, and you'll see that dot, dot, dot pattern as the needle runs out. And it's a specific technique. It has a very specific look. It's gratifying and fun to do. So, yeah, I mean, if you want a traditional tattoo, you'll make my day. But if you want custom work, you can still make my day.
So when you started, was that how you learned those traditional styles like that? What was the...
When I started, tattooing it hadn't quite mainstreamed yet, but the art was blowing up all over the place as far as styles and techniques. So, and this was in the 80s, and tribal was still really big. So actually I started off with a lot of tribal work, largely because it's easy to correct.
Oh, interesting.
If you do a crap line when you're starting on tribal, you're going to fill it in anyways. It doesn't stand out like traditional work. Like, oh, wow, that line is a piece of crap. So I start off with a lot of tribal. You start to realize I still like the look of it sometimes on people, and I'm more than happy to do it. But it is like painting a house with a toothbrush. Okay, it's just slow, repetitious, and tedious. There's no fun in doing it. Sometimes there's fun in designing, and there's a satisfaction in being finished, but the actual process, as far as being interesting, it's not. So I started off with a lot of that, and then I pushed towards a more black and gray style, and my black and gray informed how I did color, and then I went to color a lot, and now I'm moving back towards black and gray a bit, but still enjoy color. If I had a perfect world, I would do 3/4 black and gray and 1/4 color.
Okay.
In a perfect world, which doesn't exist.
Maybe. For some people it probably does, but not us. Yeah, that's interesting, because I know early printing kind of had that concept, right? Like you could afford black and white and maybe one color, and there's a lot of interesting artwork that they created based upon that.
Yeah, it has limits. Mixing art and earlier talking about punk rock, look at all the early punk rock artwork, all the flyers and stuff. They couldn't use color, and they were working off Xerox machines that really couldn't even pull off a halftone, right? So they had to make their stuff very graphic, very strong. This was true for both album covers and for flyers and other artwork. It reads immediately, and that has a relationship to tattooing as well. One of my favorite album covers is the Subhumans, The Day the Country Died. It's just black and white, and they get so much in there, and it's coarse and it's crude, but it reads, and it has a certain gut emotional level that's really nice.
That's it. Even going back to punk, it's interesting that there's this big meme right now, OK Boomer, where everyone's making fun of boomers, and I get the sense we're both Gen X, roughly.
I was actually born on sociology. What most sociologists were cutoff point is 65.
Okay.
I was born in 65, so I straddle boomers / Gen X.
I'm going to say you're more Gen X.
in my general attitudes, I have to say,
right.
I didn't get the home ownership and stuff of the average person.
Right, and I'm 78, so I'm pretty close. I'm obviously but I'm kicking towards. There's a little bit of a cusp, but I'm definitely not as social media obsessed. I participate because that's how I stay in contact with my friends.
Yeah, it's same thing with myself. I'm not social media obsessed, but I have found it useful. It's easier to keep up on the news. I don't use print media for news, and I can keep up with friends. And what I don't know, soft friends, kind of. They're friends, but you're not super close to them. You don't hang out a lot, but you don't want to lose track of them. This happens to me in students a lot.
I see.
They're on their social media. They're young. They're on some of them are on Facebook. Almost all of them are on Instagram.
Yeah.
And if they want to, you know, they friend me or whatever, or follow, or vice versa. And I can kind of keep track of their lives a little bit. You know, oh, look, somebody's getting married, someone's having kids, someone went to Hawaii, you know, someone's moving because of their job.
Someone's an anti-vaxxer, someone wants me to join their multi-level marketing program.
Oh my God, I'm so happy haven't had any anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, or anything like
I made a comment on my sister-in-law's thing, and I don't think she's an anti-vaxxer, but I think maybe her family is. Sorry if I'm outing anybody, but yeah, I made some comment about like chicken pox, because I had chicken pox as a kid.
So did I.
And there's I don't know when, I think my baby brother was born in 86, and I think he got the vaccine, and I was like so jealous that he didn't have to go through that, because I still get, people who are thinking anti-vax, the one problem that you get once you get chickenpox is you can get shingles, which hurts way more because the virus lays dormant in your nerves.
Yeah, the thing I read recently that completely horrified me is actually on measles. It resets your immune system.
Yeah, I have to get a booster apparently. Most of us should get a booster, I think.
Wow.
Don't quote me, but Google it yourself. See if it follows in your. But because the anti-vaxxers have brought back measles, we're going there, guys. They're clapping. Yeah.
Vaccinate your goddamn kids.
I mean, unless you're like, I'll say maybe if you live on a farm and you're never going to be around kids, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's not a thing. I don't know.
Honestly, I don't know. I think it's sad that diseases are being reintroduced into a population that were functionally extinct. It's the U.S. You know, again, speaking from sociology background, I don't know much about other countries as far as this goes. The U.S. has always had a strain of anti-intellectualism. Okay, there's always been this, you know, my opinion is as good as your facts, kind of running through the culture. And in recent years, it's kind of exploded. It's gotten anti-vax. There should not be an anti-vax movement. You know, there should not be enough anti-vaxxers that we would bring it up on a radio show about tattooing and stuff. Right. It's disappointing.
Tattooed punk rock attitude guys shouldn't be telling anti-vaxxers. The subject shouldn't even come up.
I'll tell you, it has nothing to do with anti-vax, but things that tattoo guys shouldn't have to tell doctors. I was in a motorcycle accident. It happens. If you ride a motorcycle, eventually you're going to fall. And a doctor asked me if I had any other injuries other than the ones we'd gone over. I said, well, you know, I got road rash on the leg. Oh, can I see it? Sure. He started rolling up my pant leg. I had to stop him. Dude, stop. There's not a lot of blood, but there's blood. Maybe you want to put gloves on.
For sure.
You know, and I was kind of horrified. I shouldn't tell a doctor to glove up. I mean, I don't know what he was thinking. It's all like, oh, he seems like a nice guy. Probably got nothing. I might have things he doesn't know. I don't know I have. You know? I don't, you know, but he doesn't know.
Right.
You know, so I feel, I don't know, there's issues with the culture and facts, you know?
This is total, like, let's see, pick your brain on this, because you're on top of politics too. There's been a large rise in populism. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we're going to look back and blame social media, specifically Facebook, since the algorithm kind of feeds into this? We shape behavior in our cultures based upon, like, let's say, capitalism really makes people really obsessed with, let's say we're going back to art. Like, there used to be a time where you would have a patron of art, right? Like, even the Catholic Church. I have a friend that has a really good gig with the Catholic Church, like Michelangelo, all those people. Now art has to make money, even with punk rock. Like, it's harder for a band to kind of... So right now, Facebook is the new technology. Like, if you think about Gutenberg and...
Yeah, I forgot what the number is. I think it's in the 40-something% get most of their news from Facebook, which kind of horrifies me. Facebook has a lot of disinformation on it. As for trying to predict how people will look back on it, I'm not sure. I think Facebook conceptually is harmless. It's just people following people. But the thing is, it has helped shape the culture. It has spread things like, certain political disinformation, certain levels of propaganda. I don't think the anti-vax people would have as much, as an example, have as much a platform without social media. Without social media, even the mainstream press was beholden mostly to their corporate masters. They wouldn't report on it much. There's no money to be made by reporting on anti-vaxxers until it becomes a huge thing on social media, and then there's money to be made in the report on anti-vaxxers. So, and recently with Mr. Facebook himself saying, we're going to allow lies. Specifically, we are not going to have any problem with anyone printing the most outrageous lies on Facebook for specific political purpose. That's pretty straight up Nazi shit.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's probably because we just had Twitter announced that they weren't going to allow campaign ads. They're going to still allow ultimately those handles will still exist, but at least they're not going to allow a flood of money.
Yeah, they're cutting down on. They're not going to do official ads,
right?
Which won't cut down, on the conversations that will be had, and people will still, say things that are untrue. I don't know if it's the ultimate solution, but I think it's better than Facebook's policy of specifically saying, well, we're going to allow liars to be liars. Because that's not, that's First Amendment marketplace of ideas. No, an idea is something that's maybe an opinion. There's a difference between an opinion and a falsehood. An opinion is you look at a fact and I look at a fact and we interpret that fact differently. Then there's, I look at a fact and you say the fact doesn't exist. That's a problem. The first one is two people rationally having a disagreement. Even if they're ideologically opposed, they can agree something exists. The other one disagrees that something exists or says something exists that does not. You're talking about someone who's arguing reality and someone who's arguing fantasy, and I think it'll have ill consequences for the culture at large.
Right.
Honestly, it's not the first time it's happened, but I honestly believe we're in late stage capitalism.
Yes.
I don't know if there's going to be the political will to try to reform capitalism again, as we did the last time it tried to collapse.
The Great Depression?
The Great Depression and into the World Wars, the rise of fascism. I will remind your listeners that the last time during the Great Depression, there was rise in fascism in the U.S., in England, in Spain, in Germany, etc., in Italy. And in some places it didn't quite take hold. We got lucky as far as the U.S. and England, but obviously in other places it did. It took a world war, the destruction of most of Europe to pull us out of the collapse of capitalism. And now everything we did back then to make capitalism livable, if you will, has been repealed.
Right. The sort of checks and balances. There's obviously checks and balances in the Senate and Congress right now that are not being adhered to.
Politically, there's been collapse, and part of it is unintended result of like FDR's policy. FDR, while I could say his policies were good regarding blah 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 and the Depression, he also expanded the executive branch's power substantially. Once power is gained, no one gives it up. Okay, and you could say, oh, he wanted to use his powers for good. Yeah, but you hand over the same powers to someone else who maybe has less kind thoughts. No one gives up power willingly, and the executive has continued to expand its powers. If you look at the Constitution, can the executive branch propose legislation? It says nothing about it specifically, but it's implied that it should not be involved in the legislative process. We all know that the president is the primary mover of legislation nowadays. So there's a setup now. I worry not so much for myself because I'm old, but working with young people and having young customers, tattooing is a thing of not as youthful as it used to be because of money, but I worry about the future for other people. I don't know about the country, and I don't know about the world in general, since we're still the biggest economy, we have the biggest military. I mean, in World War II, a big chunk of the world stopped Germany. So who stops the U.S.?
Well, you definitely have... I don't think Russia's necessarily with their disinformation, and Putin's at this point jokingly, openly, that he's messing with us, and apparently that's his signature. Even with the poisoning of the spy that they were holding there in England, it was like this... The whatever poison was only created in Russia, but then Russia was like, well, we didn't do it. But it's kind of like they want you to know they did it, but they're going to deny that they did it. So it's like this disinformation right now is just to destabilize the West. But I don't know that it's to be the next world power.
It might be to be the next world power. In any case, yes. Power to an authoritarian is its own goal. And, you know, Putin's plainly an authoritarian. And he, like many authoritarians, particularly those who can gain a world stage of power, they feel that, in a sense, they're making their mark. You know, Hitler felt he'd go down in history as a great man. I'm sure so did Stalin, so did Pol Pot, blah, blah, blah. They all think they're great people. And so, as you mentioned, Putin has this style of kind of a wink and a nudge, and it's an intimidation tactic. Hey, I just killed an opponent. Check it out. You know, do you really want to oppose me or try to report? Because he's notorious for killing reporters first and foremost. Right. Do you really want to dig? Because you're going to die.
Or do you want to run against me?
Yeah,
you're going to die.
You're going to die. And so, on its face, because remember, authoritarians love the law and order shtick. They have no respect for the law whatsoever in regards to themselves, as you could look to our president for. But they like to use the rhetoric of law and order to apply to everyone else. So they have to do it with a wink and a nudge in their minds. You know, hey, I'm all about law and order, but I murder whoever bothers me. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And it's the current administration in this country, you know, I didn't do that. Well, if I did that, and I'm not saying I did it, it shouldn't be wrong. Yeah, I did it. It's not illegal.
Right.
Because it's me. So it becomes a certain amount of comedy, you know, during your tragedy.
I've definitely become to wonder if gaslighting's easier because there's this, that when we talk about, you know, I'm probably smushing anti-vaxxing into this, but like if you're already can think anything, like if you could say a fact and think otherwise of the fact, it's easier to gaslight at people because they're already in that.
I agree with that. It's and that's why you have things like the flag salute. Early indoctrination helps. If you convince people young and early of any given idea, then you can just maintain it. It's not really hard. You know, if you can make, oh, you know, America is a great country, and in many ways it is. I'm saddened constantly because I see it as a nation who had great potential and squandered most of it. You know, we have great ideas of how to run a country. Some of them need to be updated, but we still have some really, really good ideas. But we've never really stuck to them. And once we became a world power, our history is so vile, it's difficult to comprehend for your average person. I start talking about what we've done and what we do to anyone who really doesn't know, and it's a very short time before they tell me they do want me to stop. They get cognitive dissonance. They can't stand the idea that we've been the bad guy. We've been the bad guy all over the world. We've supported the most heinous leaders, you know, tens of thousands, millions of people dead at our hands directly or indirectly. It's vile. And the average person, they've been indoctrinated. You can watch them almost twitch mentally, and they make me stop after a while. They can't listen to it.
Right. Even recently with us pulling out of Syria, supporting our allies, the Kurds. And like for a second there was this flash of maybe Trump knew what he was talking about because he was like, you know, we shouldn't be, you know, in these places forever. But I could also tell that he just was repeating rhetoric that he probably heard on Fox News and didn't actually know what he was talking about. Because clearly he needed to create a path to support the Kurds, but not just leave them high and dry between Turkey and Syria?
Well, you know, the withdrawal with the Kurds has been a cluster F, and you know, you got to look at it. He's taking a bribe. He opened up a hotel in Turkey. What a surprise! We're, quote, protecting the oil in Syria, and the troops that we've withdrawn are now going to Iraq. So no, he's not bringing troops home. He's just shuffling them around a bit and lying. Look, if Trump tells the truth on any given subject, it's just broken clock syndrome. It's an accident. He never means to tell the truth. He said it in his own book. He's like, lie often, keep people off balance. He loves the gaslight. It's a technique he uses constantly, and, you know, fairly effectively. The thing is, if you're not one of his followers, the gaslights are sloppy. You know, that's why people, you know, other people like myself think he's an idiot. We can't help it. It's like everything he says is outright dumb, but it's a gaslight too, and it works on a certain part of the population. So his technique is dumb and sloppy, but effective, which you could only have in a country that's diminished things like fact-based reasoning. By the way, a reason that I like doing robotics, fact-based reasoning.
I see.
I actually had someone online, you know, you get in those arguments online. They're loads of fun because there's no consequences to them.
Yeah.
And I once said along the lines of, you know, try using fact-based reasoning. And for one of the first times in my life, I was left speechless when the person replied, I don't use fact-based reasoning because it only uses facts. I had no idea what to say to that. I still don't.
Yeah, it's too bad that they reap the benefits of all this type of work and research and medicine, and then it's like, well, I don't believe in it, and you're like, it's not a belief. Like you know, I grew up fundamentalist Christian, so the evolution had a similar argument, right? Where, you know, and I was homeschooled, so I knew evolution, but it wasn't in my textbooks. So that's how indoctrinated you could be if your family does that to you. But it's interesting with evolution that you could be like, well, I don't believe in, and it's like, I guess they don't realize that their religion.
Facts don't need a belief.
Right.
That's where they lose it. They think everything is a belief. It's like, no, you don't need to believe in a fact for it to be true. You need to believe in a myth for it to be true to you. You know, I'm going to pick on religion a little bit.
We've hit everything that.
Yeah,
let's get them all.
Okay. It's not to mock people's faith. Faith is an important part of many people's lives, and it sees them through both their best and their worst times. Faith has a function, if you will, in sociology speak. It functions to help people see purpose in their existence. It helps them through bad times like family deaths or things like that. But at its core, it's a belief in that there is no factual evidence to support that idea. It's something that, quote, they feel. I'm not going to diminish their feeling, but what they feel has no basis in a verifiable fact. And that makes it different from facts. You don't need to believe in evolution. You don't need to believe in quantum physics. You don't need to believe that the Earth rotates around the sun. These things are. You don't need to believe in climate change.
Oh man!
So these things are facts. They're not. It's not an argument. What we do about climate change, now that's an argument. You know, I have an opinion. Other people have opinions. This is the interpretation of a fact. The fact is there's climate change. What do we do about it? That's a bunch of opinions. Climate change doesn't exist. That's a denial of reality, and therein my problem lies with a large section of American culture.
Let me know if you think this is a false correlation, that because of the capitalism and it taking away and making so much loss, because that is how people cope with loss, is religion, is belief, that it kind of just creates this bigger, like the kind of master over the slave situation. Like, the harder it is to make ends meet, the more you rely on praying to Jesus and God to make ends meet.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the Marxist line, right? That religion is the opiate of the masses. He didn't mean that as a tear on religion. He meant it as it gets used as a tool of capitalism. Both systems are largely authoritarian. Capitalism is a strict hierarchy: more money equal more good, and you have priest classes in most religions. They're hierarchical. They're authoritarian. They complement each other very well. The hierarchy of the churches have no problem with economic disaster. As you implied, it brings the flocks in. If you have nothing materially, you look for the metaphysical. It's not rocket science. It makes sense. The relationship between capitalism and religion is hand in glove. They love each other. If there's a better world waiting for you after you die, you're not as concerned with this one.
Right. Well, let's. We've covered a lot. There's way more to cover. I want to get a little bit back to tattoo. As we.
Oh right, it's a tattoo show.
No, I love this stuff. Some of my friends. This is like one of my contentions. My friends. They were like, "Why aren't you talking about this kind of stuff too?" Because this is like conversations that I have.
I warned you when you walked in the shop. I talk.
No, that's perfect. It makes my job easier. Not like I'm getting paid, which would fit with my whole more Marxist angle when people go like, "What are they getting paid for podcasting?" I was like, I'm just doing it for fun. I'm doing it because I believe that access of knowledge and information is an important way to undermine capitalism.
Yeah, well, my mentoring of a high school robotics team is all volunteer work, never been paid a penny.
Right. There are some things, like when you hear about the post office, why is it not making money? There's some things that aren't supposed to make money necessarily.
Well, also it's been sabotaged.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the artists in your shop. Kind of let us know who else is there.
Besides myself, there's Simon and Dave. This is funny. I tattooed the owner of the shop way before he started tattooing. And it was quite the ordeal. I had to do an armband on him based on an existing piece. The piece was too high. I no longer will do armbands as high as he has an armband on him. There's a lot of distortion in the upper arm, etc., etc. I mean, we literally went through an entire roll of paper towels, erasing it and redoing it and erasing it and redoing it. It was quite the adventure. So. Evidently, I did not know this until I started working for him, but I was a big influence on his decision to tattoo. That was weird. It's still a little weird when I say it out loud. So I influenced him to get into this business. Then he started a shop, and now I work for him. Simon is the youngest artist at the shop, and he apprenticed under David. David likes to go by Dave. Dave apprenticed Simon. And Simon is no longer an apprentice. He's a professional tattoo artist. All of us at the moment, it's unfortunately for us, none of us really specialized. Simon may still because he's young, but me and Dave, we're not specialists. When the economy took a dump back in 2008, it was good to be a specialist. And me and Dave will do anything, but it kind of cost us reputationally in the sense that we weren't the go-to guys for something. I took pride in being a generalist, but economically it's been a little rougher that way. It's kind of weird because I'm like, I'll do anything you want. You want tribal, you want black and gray, you want photoreal, you want not color photoreal. That's beyond my scope. But you want traditional, you want new school, blah blah blah. I'll do anything, but because I'm not associated with a specific style. And Dave's the same way. He's a generalist. Anything you want, Dave can do. He has a lot of background in actual commercial work, and he draws really well. Simon has a lot of style. He also draws well, but he likes his stuff more stylized. And it shows. I'll be getting tattooed by Simon soon, hopefully.
Nice. That's a good, endorsement for him. Any upcoming projects that you're working on? Any things going on at the shop that's happening soon?
None that I could think of specifically. We think of them as they happen. Nowadays, was it in March? I think it's March, April, May, March. March or April is the shop's anniversary. So last year I convinced Dave to have a big party, and then it came back and bit me because I couldn't be there for the party because my robotics team had won a regional, so we got invited to the championships, which were in Houston, and Dave mocked me for it. I said, "Look, I didn't plan to win." So that's the only thing I can think of coming up, but that's obviously in the spring, so we got a whole season to go through for that. But makes no never mind. We're always there for whoever walks in, and all three of us, we tend to like to take our time. We like to do custom work, even if it's a traditional tattoo or something. We like to draw it up. We like to do something special for the customer. I think we're not different than a lot of tattooists that way. Everyone wants to do something fun, do something interesting.
I like the I didn't plan to win. That could be a T-shirt.
Yeah, that just was very
That's
unexpected.
definitely my life so far. I don't do it because I think I'm going to win. Well, thanks again for coming by. Again, it's Alfredo Alvear.
Alvear.
Let's remind everybody where they can find you.
Okay, it's Parlour Tattoo. It's on Satakoy, 20036 Satakoy Streets in Winnetka. And come on by. We're open every day except Wednesdays, and you'll find us to be a rather welcoming shop.
Right, it's a nice little corner there. There's a massage parlor if you guys want to take it.
Yeah, there's a massage parlor.
They're also on. He's on Instagram at tattoo4 FOREWE. The shop is at Parlour Tattoo Studio, and they also have a website, www.parlourtattoo.com. So again, it's Alfredo at Parlour Tattoo Studio. For more info, you could go to kpcradio.com. I want to thank you all for listening. I'm Anthony Sanchez.